Lynched on CTV, proudly brought to you by Christchurch's #1 dining offer, Sequoia 88 at the Redwood Hotel, a food concept unequalled. Good evening. We've heard so much about the rebuild of central Christchurch, but what about the suburbs? What's happening where you live and how well are residents coping? Tonight, I'll ask two community leaders, and Lynched starts right now. Thanks for your company tonight. Right, it is time to focus on the communities of Christchurch with a grassroots look at how well the rebuild is actually going. It feels as if the central city is finally making progress, but what about Christchurch's suburbs? Well, here to discuss exactly that is Leanne Curtis from Concern and Dion Swiggs from Rebuild Christchurch. And good evening to you both.
Good evening.
Let me start with you, Leanne. How much progress is being made in the suburbs from your point of view? You see a lot every day.
Yeah, I think there's a lot happening now. I mean, we're certainly seeing that there are a lot of houses out there with signs on them being repaired or rebuilt. So it's definitely ramped up this year. The insurers did say it would be middle of 2014 that it would ramp up, and it has. I suppose the other side of that is if you are one of the people that's still waiting, your progress is zero. You tend not to see what's happening around you, and the people that you talk to are people who are not making progress as well. So it's not always as visible as it should be. In your opinion, is the national media doing a good job in highlighting the issues that are still relevant to Christchurch, or are they overplaying it? What do you see in that? Oh, hard one. I mean, Concern as an organisation, we really didn't support the show that was on Campbell Live in the format that it was planned. As it happened, without the leaders there, I think it did what it needed to do, which was to say to the rest of Auckland, hundreds of people, and we just don't know how many, but hundreds of people are still really, really suffering and terribly exhausted, awful situations, no faith, no hope. Our point was to have put the leaders into that conversation and be asked about progress to an audience full of people who haven't made anything was just going to be, flame to a fire that didn't need to go. And I think it would have been, that would have been for media purposes. Well, you're right. I've worked at Close-Up before, and you do a lot of things for stunts to make good television, to be fair. And I have to say, I did see some of the same old faces in the audience. Now, that's not to dismiss the genuine cases. Let's make that clear before the hate mail starts coming in. That's not to dismiss there are genuine cases. You got hate mail? I got that. I know what that's like. But there are genuine cases out there. But Dion Swiggs, do you think perhaps the Campbell Live program last week or the week before, was it counterproductive, or did it do what it needed to do, and that was just at least illustrate the issues many people continue to face as they battle EQC and EQC issues? I mean, there are serious issues out there, and we can't forget about those. And for those people that are facing those issues, it's everything to them, and that is really important. I mean, this is their life savings in these houses. And what we need to remember is, I think EQC are around 85% through their undercap repairs. There's a bit of, nobody really knows exactly their numbers. So when you get to the insurer, those are major rebuilds and major repairs that need to be done, and it doesn't happen overnight. I mean, these are, a house takes a year or so to build now due to the sort of what's going on. But, there's some major issues that need to be fleshed out. I was there at the Campbell Live thing, with the Canterbury Insurance Assistance Service, because I'm one of the trustees on there. What did you make of it then? I mean, there are many genuine cases out there. So what we went there for was, these people have got genuine issues that they don't know how to get forward, or they don't know how to move forward or something like that. So what we were doing is people were going into the caravan talking about their specific issue, and then we were outside basically giving them advice on how to move to the next step. So, it might have been, you need to talk to this person, or you need to do this next, and something like that. Sometimes it just takes an independent person just to say, hey, look, this is what you need to do to get to the next step in this process, because it really is a process, and you need to understand that what needs to happen next is what's going to happen. Leanne Curtis, in your view, are there enough resources to help the most vulnerable working through EQC and insurance issues? Do those people know there are actually services available? No. Or are there services available? Yeah, there are services that are available. So Dion's already talked about CAS, you've got the Residential Advisory Service, or RAS, you've got Earthquake Support Coordinator Service that's been there for a long time. There's Canterbury Law. The insurers themselves have started to put in different sorts of support services now to really target the specific. That said, for all that there is this much out there and available, they're not very well known. We still know that we talk to people and they say, oh, haven't heard of them, who are they? Some of the problem with that is they've not really been rooted that deeply in the community. Our point back to the people who are creating services is that they needed to actually realise that the people that needed to use these services are not normal service users. They're not people who would normally be in WINS or in a social support service. These are...
They've never had to ask for help before.
They've never had to ask for help. They don't like anything that looks like a welfare service or looks like it's going to be delivered through a welfare service. So it's been actually, they haven't necessarily been positioned in the right place. I think they're getting better at trying to push it out to the community. But the other side of that is that there's as much mistrust for the people who are stuck in the fact that anybody can help, so they don't necessarily put their hand up either.
These vulnerable people, are they the 6,000 that EQC and, oddly enough, the insurance companies say are vulnerable? A couple of weeks ago, a big report, front page of the press, there's still 6,000 people that are deemed vulnerable. Dion Swicks, what did you make of that?
I mean, what do you class as vulnerable? I mean, that is the hard question. So, I mean, from my perspective within CS, we're dealing with people that are, have health issues that might be old, over 80. There are set criteria. But one of the things that I'm really impressed with some of the insurance companies is they're looking at a more holistic view. So this is where you think about somebody who might be a high-functioning person in their day job, does really, really amazing work, gets along and does things. But it just takes one hiccup and then they can't deal with this rebuild process along with all the other pressures of their life. They're vulnerable and they need help. And that's what I'm really impressed with. Some of the insurance companies are just starting to get that on board.
Leanne Curtis, what is the number one issue that you're seeing time and time again with people coming to see you, CanCern, for example?
Oh, mistrust. Without a doubt, it's mistrust. It doesn't matter where people go or who they talk to, they're told you're going to be ripped off, you're going to have a rubbish job done. So you can't actually even go into a meeting without thinking, how do I cover my back? How do I protect myself? So the biggest issue is a them and us mentality, and there's a winner and a loser, and it all creates this terrible place of mistrust where you go in with this heightened sense of anxiety, so you can't hear, and we're not translating for each other very well. We have insurers talking about a commercial contract, you've got homeowners talking about something terribly emotional, and like Dion said, this is their life savings and it's overwhelming, so we talk past each other. Communication has led to, terrible communication has led to mistrust.
We need to take a break, but I want to pick up on that perceived mistrust issue. That's next on CTV. Stay with us. Welcome back to Lynched on CTV. My guests tonight are Leanne Curtis from CanCern and Dion Swicks from Rebuild Christchurch. Leanne, I want to pick you up on something you said earlier before the commercial break, and that was the preconceived notion that people often go into insurance companies or deal with EQC with thinking, I'm going to get ripped off. There's that level of mistrust. And to be fair, you can understand why, though. What's been portrayed in the media, of course, are horrific examples of insurance companies not coming to the party. So how do we deal with that perceived mistrust issue?
Big thing to break down, and I think now we've just got to go one person at a time, try to hook them up with somebody who is able to be trusted, and let them foster the relationship or the pathway through with the insurer. So we're about to kick off a pilot project with Southern Response, which does exactly that. It says, well, we can step in between Southern Response and the homeowner and hold the trust, because we've got a good working relationship with both. So we're not asking the homeowner to step out and take a great leap of faith into thinking that Southern Response is going to deliver them really brilliant customer service. We'll stand in the middle and say, we'll make sure that they deliver good customer service, and we'll work with Southern Response to be able to do that.
Is Southern Response getting any better, or is the simple fact of the matter is now they're resolving more and more claims as a result as time goes past? So they haven't really got better, it's just that time's moving forward, so they've had to actually pay out.
Well, I mean, they are the best example, I think, of where the perception and the noise in the community has really done some damage. So Southern Response started off really well. They had a terrible year last year, which ended up, with the protest, culminated in that protest. And that really shook them up, and they had to stop and think, we have quite seriously screwed this up. What are we doing wrong? And what they uncovered was that their dogmatic holding on to firm but fair, the way that had been interpreted and then delivered by staff had meant that it was covering over mistakes that had been made. So they've stepped back from that. For us, Southern Response has always been the one insurer that is willing to take risks, they're willing to look at something that's gone wrong and try to create something better out of it. They're more innovative.
So why then do we consistently hear stories where Southern Response are not doing well? We've got no Southern Response, we've got emails, we've got people who have genuine concerns about this company.
Because they have such a big market share. I mean, they insure more than anybody else. So for a start, they've got more people making noise. And once you start a little bit of noise, everybody goes, yeah, me too, me too. Now, we've actually stopped and talked to some of those Southern Response customers and said, can you unpick what it is that went terribly wrong in your insurance claim? Their stories aren't any worse, they're not any better than any other insurer. And sometimes they can't identify something specific, but it's the noise in the community that you are obviously going to be ripped off by Southern Response, and definitely don't trust them, and they're government funded. That creates more mistrust than perhaps with the other insurers. But without a doubt, they are actually, I'd say that they are performing better. They are making better progress and being more innovative than most of the other insurers.
Dion Swiggs, I know you've done some contract work for Southern Response. What is it like inside that office? Is it getting better, do you think? You're going to say yes, of course, aren't you?
Well, I've done some work on their engagement strategies, but look, the simple fact is 9 months ago they didn't have a solutions team. 9 months ago they didn't have a customer support team. 9 months ago they didn't have a communications team, and that's expanded quite a lot. So, there are a lot of things that they didn't have 9 months ago, and some of those things have come because of the protests. So they did, stand back and say, hey, look, we have made a mistake.
But isn't it terrible, though, that people have had to protest outside their offices to actually get anything done? It's taking protest and the media to give them a bit of a kick up the bum they so rightly probably deserved in the first place.
Yeah, but so let's not insurers, though.
Let's not look back at this and just sort of say, well, this is what's going to be moving forward, and then, with these processes, hopefully that, people have confidence that they can actually go in there and talk to them. Yes, there's going to be some issues and stuff like that. People are going to need to go to litigation. There are some expectations that are far too high, and, there are some of those other factors that are just going to have, you just cannot move forward because of, land mass movements, contamination. Retaining walls are a big thing that's going to happen in the city in the next little while. All these things are still, and then there's the declaratory judgment that the government, the council is going to do against the insurers and EQC about floor levels. So, the council want all floor levels on repairs and everything to be lifted. So, there's so many uncertainties still, and even when there's uncertainties with the people that are wanting to, do the work to rebuild your house, and there's, they don't even know what the process is forward for that. How can there be an expectation to know?
Let me hear your personal opinions on this. Do you believe the government should have stepped in and forced insurance companies to offer deadlines as to when and how to create a resolution for claimants? Dion?
Well, there's two examples. There's Queensland Reconstruction Authority did this, and the New York after Hurricane Sandy did something very similar. So there are some very good examples of how it worked properly or how it worked well. Don't know how that works with the EQC system here. There needs to be some sort of more information around that.
Is that too simplistically to ask for that because of the complex issues?
Well, I spent a couple of weeks in Victoria travelling around doing disaster recovery, and one of the things that came up time and time again from the homeowners was The insurers paid us out within a year. Now they did that. Their story was they did that to rip us off because then all the changes came. So the people have an insurance payout made within a year, but it's not enough to build the house to the new standards. So had we done that, had we paid out in a year and then we had the MB guidelines come in, we would have been stuffed as well. So it's too simplistic. It's too black and white to look at another recovery. What we've been through here in the quakes cannot be compared to floods, to storms, to to those other things. It's
there are, as I said before, there are examples where things could be done better, and that'll happen over time, so that next time this doesn't happen. But the thing is, it's quite unique here. In New Zealand, our insurance policies were build back what they had. It wasn't a here's your $450,000 that you're insured for. The insurer has to build back to as new or to repair it the way it was within the legislation. It was an open cap, so it's very unique, and it makes it quite challenging. So, there's no simple answer right now. Maybe if we have a different insurance like we do now, where it's capped at your value, then maybe that's a force that you pay out. If it's up to that level, you pay out within a certain period of time.
We've got to take a break. When we return, there's so much red zone land, isn't there, particularly on the east? What are we actually going to do with it? And of course, hope and vision for Christchurch communities. We'll hear from these two about that next. Stay with us. Welcome back to Lynched on CTV. My guests tonight are Dion Swiggs and Leanne Curtis. Dion, let me start with you. What should we do with the red zone land? There's plenty of it on the east. It seems to me Sarah has not moved fast enough to get rid of those houses, and people on the fringe are probably getting very annoyed, and rightfully so. Well,
there's public consultation happening at the moment. So actually, we actually worked with Eastern Vision and the Avon Autokato Network, who is a group of community people, about 2 years ago, to actually get some ideas on Rebuild Christchurch's website about what people wanted. So those visions or those words have been collated to themes, and now they've got the Evo space where those themes are actually evolving into things that are in the east. So there's some really good consultation actually happening, and this is a community-driven, bottom-up consultation. This is really good. This is almost the opposite to what's actually happening in Kaipoi with the red zone up there, where the government's gone in and said, tell us what you want. And so it'll be really fascinating to see the differences there. But people want water attractions out there. I mean, it's a natural environment, and I think people are really looking, it's the flooding issue and all these kind of things with the land drop. So people look, rowing lakes is really keen.
Water sports is good.
Yeah, I know, exactly. So, water sports, and I've lost my train of thought there. But also, bird sanctuaries are something nature, and people want, just those kind of things where you can actually engage with nature, really.
Leanne, what should we do with the red zone land? What do you want?
I don't know.
Fountain?
No, fountain.
Racing track?
We lived in the red zone, and it's probably Pandora's box for me. I think it's one of those things I've kept a lid on and I don't quite know how to deal with. So when we even start talking about what we should do with it, I just have a blank. As long as the process by which they gather the information from people, gather the ideas like Evo Space, and it'll be interesting to see how this Evo Space engagement is actually integrated in with the government, with the Sarah-led engagement, which will kick off. But as long as the engagement process is robust enough, and the decision maker, who ultimately will be, the minister and the Crown, actually take notice of what the people are saying, then I think I'm okay with it. I don't think I'm okay with houses going back. I do not want houses back where we
had to leave.
where our families were, but that's probably just a personal
It does seem wrong. No, it does seem, I was there with you on close-up when we watched your house being bulldozed down, and you do feel slightly violated, don't you, seeing your own home being smashed with a bulldozer?
Yeah, and I think that's something to note, is that this red zoning, the decisions about it, as exciting as it is, and it is exciting, and it should be something that the people in the East can really sort of sink themselves into and take some real ownership of. It will open up some wounds, I think, for a lot of the people that had to leave. So it's kind of a sensitive time as well.
It would seem a bit cheeky, though, if the government decided to sell the land again, wouldn't it? It would just seem a little bit cheeky. Dion, don't you reckon?
For some, it will, yeah. there's too many unknown variables at the moment, so you really can't sort of talk about it.
And I think it's almost like this insurance thing of that you have a commercial contract, or in the case of the red zone, it will be a fiscal liability that they have, as opposed to what's been a very emotional place. So we're going to end up with the money argument versus the moral argument again.
I want to ask you this question, and I get confused with this, and so a lot of people that call me up. You guys, I know, work closely with the Canterbury Insurance Assistance Service and the Residential Advisory Service, the Earthquake Support Coordinator Service. Are those services working? Are people going to them? Do we know they exist, for example?
Well, I mean, as I said, I'm a trustee on the Canterbury Insurance Assistance Service. We set that up. That's the government one.
So who needs...
the council one with a group of awesome people.
that help, do you think?
So,
who's going to benefit from going there?
For us specifically, we're really targeting the real vulnerable people. So we're actually trying to work, and it's really difficult. Nobody really intercommunicates, and this is the real issue that's really holding things up in this space. Anyway, is there's not that intercommunication, and there's too much patch protection going on. People need to say, "This is what we do. We'll work together. This is how much money there is available. Let's go and do the job." Because these people need their insurance stuff sorted out. They need the help. They need their hand held through this process. So if that all happened, then taking all these egos out of it, then you'll start seeing more things happening. And then, RAS needs to in my opinion, RAS needs to be the pin for this and actually be the one that says, these are the services that are around.
That's different, isn't it? That's the Residential Advisory Service.
So that's the government, that's the one that Sarah set up. This was all in tension when the government and
How
the
are they doing? How's RAS doing on behalf of Sarah? Are they working well? Are they nice? Are they getting it done?
I think Leanne can talk about that.
No, it does. It's a great service. They offer different things. I mean, for us, and to put it really bluntly, but CS is very vulnerable, and it does offer insurance advocacy, which the others don't offer. RAS, you can go in there, you can get a second opinion, a legal opinion, and now MB have basically set up a system where you can get a second opinion on your technical advice as well. So it's a good place to go.
Now that's important, because a lot of people would want second opinions.
So that's and that should make a big difference to RAS, I think, because right from the beginning, what people have wanted, have needed, what they've wanted and needed has been technical advice. You get a report, you say, is this right? Does this line up? Here's my land report, here's my, rebuild scope, does it line up? And then you've got the...
Earthquake Support Coordinator Service. Now, what's that?
Well, so that's a different kind of... It's meant to sort of navigate you and support you through, but they're more likely to be able to hook you up, and because they work with the Canterbury... accommodation.
CTAS.
But I guess what I'm trying to...
So you've got one that will support your social needs. They look at your whole situation, your family, and they try to help you actually live through the time that you're waiting and make some progress. You've got CS who will do the insurance advocacy for you. You've got RAS that's doing advice. We're going to come along and say, all we're going to do is introduce you to the right person that you need to have your conversation. We're not going to give advice, and we're not going to advocate. We're just going to make an introduction.
I guess what I'm hoping, what we can get out of tonight's episode is that there are services available. It's just putting vulnerable residents in touch with these services to make sure it's working for them.
And it's everybody. I think if you're saying that you're stuck, give one of them a go. Figure out what it is that you need. Is it advice? Is it advocacy you need? Or do you actually have real issues with your kids and housing and schools and all of that stuff? Pick up the phone, ask, this is my issue. Is this you? Sometimes it's very difficult for people to identify what it is they need. But Dion's right, it's up to us to communicate more clearly about what it is that we offer, so that we're not expecting people to come and find us. These services should all be going out to find the people.
No pressure, I want a one-word answer for this. How are people in the community, do you think, by and large, feeling right now? I'll give you two. Okay, I'll give you a sentence. Because I'm in a good mood.
Well, I have to qualify it, because the community of people that we work with are the people that are stuck. So how are they feeling? Incredibly exhausted and let down.
Dion Swiggs.
This is really hard for me because I have too many hats, but there's a disconnect within the community. So if I put my CS hat on, they're feeling down. If I put my Rebuild Christchurch hat on, we're trying to inform about what's going on. People are really optimistic and have hope. So that's what's going on.
Dion Swiggs, Leanne Curtis, thank you for your time tonight. I'm disappointed it's so short. I feel like there's so much more to cover. Well, before we go tonight, we are lucky to live in a society where we can vote It is an absolute important, and it's right that you vote, because many countries don't have that right. So this Saturday, make sure your decision counts. Make an informed decision and feel lucky that your participation plays a huge part in shaping our country's future, well, at least for the next 3 years anyway. That's our show. Good night. Lynched on CTV was proudly brought to you by Christchurch's #1 dining offer, Sequoia 88, at the Redwood Hotel, a food concept unequalled.